I thought that was you! I should have worn my white pants. You probably get this a lot, but I am a huge fan. Uncanny X-Men 183, Thor 411, X-Men Unlimited 12. You know, it has always been a dream of mine to see my face reflected in your helmet as you charge at me with murderous intent. I don't mean right now.
I'm gonna rip you in half now.
That is such a Juggernaut thing to say.
This here is Cain Marko, or more commonly known as the Juggernaut, but you probably already knew that. Well, I would say that until a couple weeks ago, I saw a tweet posing the question, could Deku beat the Juggernaut? Now, not to be rude or anything, no amount of weather feats could change the fact the moment this guy gets a running start, it's going to look like a quarterback running through a line of infants, and Midoriya over here will be turned into a cloud of red and green mist. What I also saw was many calling him obscure, which either is a sign of me becoming old or letting the Twitter brain rot consume me. But to call this guy, who has been in countless cartoons, video games, and even in live action, an obscure character is ridiculous to me. On the surface, the Juggernaut may come off as your typical bruiser character, a big old brick wall for a hero to overcome, a strong man if you will. But when you look past that, you can see the Juggernaut is deeper than that. He grows from just your run-of-the-mill villain to a fully fledged hero in the last couple of decades. Seeing how most adaptations of the character steer away from this part of the character, reducing him to just being a big old meathead, is a little sad to see because I think the Juggernaut is so much more than that. He's come a long way from being just a villain. He works for damage control, helped the Avengers, and even been an X-Men, despite not even being a mutant. He's just that damn cool. But before I get ahead of myself, I think it's important to start from the beginning. Appearing in X-Men number 12, his first appearance was a pretty important one because this was our first look in Charles Xavier's backstory, as both of their backstories are intertwined. For those who don't know, Charles and Kane are both stepbrothers, being raised by Cain Marko. In the 12th issue, we learned that Charles was always the golden child, getting trophies, praise, and all the attention from his father, while Kane was always left in the sidelines, using the only thing he has over Charles, his physical strength. Oh, and Charles would also invade his mind and tell everyone his secrets. Man, this guy sucks. A common misconception is that people think the Juggernaut is a mutant, which I know surprising, look at him, but he gets his powers from the gem of Cyttorak. He becomes his personal avatar given one mission, to destroy. To give you an idea of what being in the avatar Cyttorak entails and truly how strong Kane is, you know Doctor Strange, the Sorcerer Supreme, who literally had to sit out a civil war because victory would be decided on that alone? Yeah, no, he gets one of his most common spells from him. This guy is a real deal deity. He has devoted followers, frothing at the mouth to become the next avatar, cults, statues erected in his honor. So being the avatar grants Kane immortality, immense amount of strength, and stamina. One of my favorite instances of his powers being used is in 2023 where the Mad Titan, Thanos, is on a crash course towards Earth, so with the help of X-Men and Mr. Sinister, they have the Juggernaut shot out of a temporal cannon, tumbling at such a rate he is able to annihilate Thanos in a single shot, having his brain splattered. But the best part? It's mentioned offhanded that they don't go out of their way to retrieve him, because you see, they had a second target, Galactus. So in a single shot, light years apart, Kane was able to hit a collateral between Thanos and Galactus. He doesn't even really die per se, more so just kind of floats into space for all of eternity, and everyone just assumes, yeah, he'll make his way back, I think. But you want to know what he does with his immense power? Something that's described as able to bend reality with a single punch? I don't know, rob banks or break a couple walls? This origin, however, would change over the decades. Not to get into too much of Charles' backstory because that in and of itself is a bit of a mess and could be its own video. But mainly what I'm talking about is that Kurt kinda sucked. Like, really, really sucked. Kurt would take much of his anger out against his sons and be physically abusive towards both of them, but mainly Cain Marko getting the brunt end of his abuse. Okay, I didn't say he was the most unique character in Marvel, I said he was a fun one. Anyways, this abuse would cause a schism between both of the brothers, because while Charles believed Cain could use his strength to stop his father, the other believed he could use his gift to stop his father, but too afraid of their own father to do anything to stop him, leading to both of them blaming the other and holding against them for the majority of their lives, only being able to rekindle their relationship later on in life. Though now I know this is me looking way too deep in a comic release in the 60s, but I think making Juggernaut's main motivation in crime, robbing banks or trying to get as much money as possible, works thematically. Charles is a guy who has pretty much everything, fame and fortune, and at this point in time, he was hiding the fact he was a mutant, his gift from the public. Unlike his brother, fully using his gift given from Cyttorak. It gives some depth to his character and shows a nice dichotomy between the brothers. For someone who is literally the avatar of a god of destruction, he's quite the normal guy, like you or me. For him, breaking down 5-story buildings and crushing vaults is like punching to work. And I know he's a little vindictive towards Charles, but in his defense, have you met the guy? If you want a classic Juggernaut story to jump into that's easy to pick up, I highly recommend issue 84 of the 90s Spider-Man run, Nothing Can Stop the Juggernaut. Kind of a spiritual successor to the Spectacular Spider-Man 2 issue named the same. While that's also great and I highly recommend that one as well, I think you get an insight of how impossible it is to truly stop the Juggernaut tanking an oil tanker, screaming at the top of his lungs that nothing can stop him, while Peter's absolute persistence in the face of the impossible, having to think around the Juggernaut's abilities and not relying on his strength to beat him solely. I think issue 84 covers more of a sympathetic side of the Juggernaut while he's trying to mow down a child. Stay with me. But at the start of the issue, it's your usual Juggernaut and Spider-Man fare. We have a few quibs from Peter as he jumps around dodging Kane's assault, but despite all his might, his strongest punch only hurts him more than it does the Juggernaut. But we see something interesting. While fighting Peter, this kid, Devin, grabs something off the Juggernaut's back and runs off. This captures the ire of Kane, and he drops all intention of fighting Spider-Man and goes right after him. Spider-Man desperately tries grabbing his attention, but no matter what, Kane won't give him the time of day. All he wants is the sword. Hell, he even shouts that at the cops, that all he wants is the sword. We learn that while not entirely noble, he's doing all of this for a good cause, as you see his friend Black Tom is really sick and needs treatment, and the only way for him to afford it is if the Juggernaut sells a sword. Oh, I should have mentioned this, but Black Tom was in Deadpool 2 for all of 5 minutes, and he's the longtime friend and accomplice of Kane, being the one supplying him fake identities, because, you know, it's pretty obviously to spot the Juggernaut in a crowd. But when Peter picks up on this, he takes the Juggernaut to an alleyway and has a chat with him, telling Devin to give him back the sword, and the Juggernaut will be on his way, and he does. Once he gets what he came for, he just wanders off and goes on his way. It's a really great issue because I think it kind of signifies of what's been going on with the Juggernaut for a while. The guy's not really that bad of a dude. He's a villain in the sense of a criminal, he's kind of an ass, but he's not necessarily an evil guy. Sure, he has some anger issues, but in his defense, look, when you're the avatar of a god whose main goal is to crush anything around you, who's to blame? It doesn't help that his relationship with Charles is always a tumultuous one. I mean, he was the guy who literally voted against having the Juggernaut enter Krakoa despite being relatively friendly with the rest of the population. A little cold much, Charles, don't you think? Even during the Claremont era, he was trying to turn a new leaf. He was more so tired of constantly being the avatar of Cyttorak, in which he would walk across the entirety of the Atlantic and made his way to England, ultimately joining the team X-Calibur, but old habits die hard, so he was an on and off again villain, an ally to the X-Men depending on the writer or the scenario, but in most interpretations of the character, he's at the very least somewhat understandable. I mean, it's pretty hard to do the whole Cain and Abel anagram when Abel is really, and I mean really good at making child soldiers. But by the late 2010s and early 20s, Juggernaut kinda just became a good guy. I think you get to see this side really shine in the 2020 Juggernaut run. It really shows a human side of the Juggernaut that I think goes underappreciated. We learned that not from the gem of Cyttorak, but from him alone, that his greatest strength is persistence, which he needs because, by God, this guy's life sucks. In the first few pages of the miniseries, we see a completely depowered and haggard Kane trapped in limbo. Not wanting to be weighed down by his armor, Kane takes it off and drags it across with a chain. He makes his way through the wasteland that is Limbo, patiently making the trek for the next 30 days until he can finally return home. Which is such a moving scene in the whole miniseries for me, it's hard to see these two side by side and think they're the same character. but you can truly appreciate Kane in this miniseries because it shows that he is still the same man he is without the gem. In fact, I would go as far as to say, due to his nature of always pushing forward is what makes him such a good avatar. You can turn away from the temptation of the gem and push forward towards the path he thinks is right, which leads him to join in damage control where he demolishes buildings for them. But it takes a turn as a group of squatters are trying to disrupt his work, shouting at him and throwing debris. Instead of going on with his day, Kane sits down and tries talking to them and meets a girl called D-Cell, a streamer and who's one of the people living in the vacant building. Coming face to face with the guy who's going to destroy your only form of housing can only go so well, causing them to get into a quick fight. We're able to see where she got her namesake from because Juggernaut is caught in a beam that slows down his movement. He immediately takes her for a mutant because, to be entirely fair, if you fought them for 60 years straight, it's pretty easy to pick up on. Kane tries warning her that fighting him in a collapsing building is not the smartest move you can do, but she tempts fate and is caught in a collapsing roof. Now, Kane does something entirely different compared to his 90s counterpart. He actually gives a shit and quickly takes her to a hospital and sits by her bedside until she can wake up. They're not on the best of terms still, but they're opening up to each other at least. Plus, they kinda need one another, because currently, the Hulk is on the run and is the perfect opportunity for D-Cell to clip farm and her powers can come in handy for damage control. This is continued in issue 2 where we see Kane being absolutely battered by Bruce, desperately trying to get Hulk in range of D-Cell so damage control has any hopes of capturing him. Hulk berates Juggernaut while beating down on him, saying that he's back to following orders from the big man, just to feel good about himself. But Kane doesn't have much time to really contemplate that because, being thrown across a mountain is a little more permanent. But once Hulk is in range of D-Cell and co, she's able to halt his movement and damage control can capture him with the Gamma Shield. While this happens, I think D-Cell has a really poignant speech about Kane and really summarized what I've been trying to say. Hanging in with the last few weeks, I realized, good news, you get to play in the NFL. Bad news, it's with the New York Jets. He's a pro, one of the strongest guys on the planet, but no matter what, you never, ever think he's going to win. I really like this section because while the Juggernaut is definitely one of the stronger Marvel characters, described as an unstoppable force, hell, most of the time he has to be banished to really defeat him. You can't stop him with brute force. But whether it seems to be dumb luck, the writer, or whatever, Kane always ends up the butt of the joke. Made it seem like a blockhead where things can never quite go his way, which is what makes this character so great to read for me, because for someone who is this unstoppable, seems to trip up at every corner. This idea carries throughout the rest of the issue where damage control takes the Hulk to a courthouse. They can't kill the guy for obvious reasons, he's the goddamn Hulk.
Not run around, we have to buy the groceries.
But one by one, people line up to give their grievances. People shout at him for destroying homes, families, and taking lives that he never once thought about. While insult after insult is hurled at the Hulk, the Juggernaut becomes more and more disturbed, trying to mentally disconnect himself from the situation as much as possible. This goes on until Hulk breaks out, not ready to smash, but to say the quiet part out loud. Hulk says what they're saying is true, but at the very least for him, he wasn't in control of his actions. But everything they said to the Hulk could easily be applied to the Juggernaut. But every awful action Kane has done was fully in his control. No matter how much the Juggernaut can change and help through the X-Men or damage control, will never change the fact Kane caused so much pain to so many in the past. To some, he still is, even by working with damage control as their personal wrecking ball, leaving many homeless. Even when he's trying not to be a villain, he's still the villain to some. The last thing the Hulk says to Kane before leaving always gets me. I hope the paycheck was worth the guilt, Kane. Damn. Things don't get much better for Kane, as when he makes his way back from the courtroom, he soon has another meeting there because a lawyer hands him paperwork notifying him that he's being sued for the bankruptcy of a construction company for a grand total of $25 million. Yeah, not great. A couple of weeks later, we see the Juggernaut in a courtroom with what I might say is a snazzy as hell suit. Do you think there's like a specific tailor for superpowered people? Because there's no way this wasn't a special order. But just like with Bruce, the prosecutor's main argument is that the Juggernaut, while fully aware of his actions, has caused the city of New York millions of dollars worth of damages. Hey, we even get a reference to the original Nothing Can Stop the Juggernaut, where they reference how Spider-Man defeated Kane by putting him in a bed of concrete. But this trial is cut short as the supervillain Quicksand breaks in and demands to have the mutant child, Diesel. Despite her protest, there's no time and the Juggernaut springs into action where Kane is flung 16 stories across New York. Him and Diesel are able to overcome the villain and after seeing the Juggernaut save the courtroom, is acquitted on all charges. Finally, at least something can go Kane's way, but still concerned for Diesel's safety, wanting to know where the quicksand came from. The people from Damage Control give him a lead saying that she came from a for-profit prison named Absolution Solutions, who are letting Armin Zola conduct experiments on superpowered prisoners. Issue 4 picks up on this where him and the team try to raid a prison, while more so that the Juggernaut attempts to do this alone, believing that it's too dangerous and this is a job only for him. But quickly after breaking in, he's captured by the android Primus. Diesel, hearing this on her comm link and desperately trying to get the Juggernaut out, goes in herself and gives herself up to Armin Zola. Learning that due to Krakoa being made and most mutants migrating there, mutant test subjects are hard to come by and Diesel will be perfect for their experiments. Juggernaut locked up and seeing Diesel being taken away is reminded of a flashback of a couple months ago. When getting his powers back from the gem of Cyttorak, he has a long conversation with him. It is time again, Cain Marko, to do what you do best. In the name of Cyttorak, unleash destruction. No. What do you mean? I'm not your avatar anymore. Then why are you here talking to me? I'm not. I'm on Earth, coming to terms that I'm finally free. I'm done serving madmen and gods. Every choice from now on, for good or bad, is going to be mine. And we see Kane break free from his imprisonment and go after Zola, freeing Diesel, and learns that, just like Quicksand, Zola was being manipulated, and they haven't found the real villains of the story yet. But before he can pay them a visit, he talks to his stepbrother Charles again, wanting to have Diesel go to Krakoa so she can be truly free from the prejudice of the states, giving her the freedom that he was never given his whole life. But knowing that she'll never accept it, they continue pushing forward, find the men who were responsible for all of this. They surround the Juggernaut and Diesel, saying that no matter how many times they run, they'll find them. So Juggernaut gives her one way out, accept her mutant heritage and claim asylum to Krakoa. Kane doesn't just want her to accept asylum, but she wants her to face the truth, just like he had to do. That, because of her power, is the reason why her parents were killed and she was homeless for years. And accepting her status as a mutant and going to Krakoa is the first step to that. Unlike Juggernaut, who is on the run again. Attacking in prison does that, you know. But now for the first time in his life, is fighting for his own cause. Not for Black Tom, not for danger control, nor a mad god, but for his own cause.